Welcome to Peak, a growth sport production that explores the power of culture on organizational performance. Music by The Edge. For show notes and more information, visit our website at growth-sport.com. Now here are your hosts, Mary Claire and Dr. Brian.
All right, Brian, we're back. We're gonna do something we've done a couple times. I want to remind people where we've been and where we're going here. So this past episode, we did a podcast on trust. And in that first episode, we talked about kind of the several characteristics of trust. We defined that trust we defined it as belief. So belief that people would do what they say they were going to do, and they were capable of doing it, and that they did it. So that cycle, right? So that definition suggests that trust is something that must be created over time. And we talked about how it can often be lost quickly. We also talked about other elements of trust, of transparency, ownership, consistency, that we often try to actually create through the model itself, the sport model itself. When you and I looked back, we listened to the episode and we kind of thought about it. We thought the view of trust was slightly incomplete. And so that's why we're double clicking. So trust is built on a foundation of social capital. And I want you to get into that and kind of your background in that world. So if trust is built on a foundation of social capital, it should be much more resilient than kind of how we presented it initially. Presuming there is a high level of social capital, it creates a level of an assumption related to intent. So the higher the social capital, the more the assumption is that the person's intentions were good. And obviously the inverse is true as well. So the negative capital, we're going to assume somebody's intent is negative or evil, so to speak. So I think that's what you and I thought was going to be valuable. Again, if we're trying to help leaders execute at a higher level, at a peak level, we've got to help them and all of us develop as leaders. And so that's why we want to kind of unpack this and double click on it. Yeah. So that was a really long intro, but we're back, Brian. We had to give some context. Social capital, here we go.
Yep. Yes. There's a puzzle that really motivated us to come back here, right? Which is we talk, and it's obvious that trust can be very fragile. And if it's broken, it's very hard to retain. But there are other times when trust is not so fragile, when really bad things happen and the trust remains. And so you have to ask yourself why. And this is what we felt like we didn't really touch on as much as we could have. And this is where we think this social capital really matters. So stay with us a little here. We're going to talk theoretically at a pretty high level of what social capital is, but we're going to end with how you get it. And it'll be really important for leaders to understand what it takes to get really strong social capital within their organization. So stay with us a little bit as we go forward.
Social capital is not typically in my lexicon as I'm thinking about life or talking with my clients. So I think that's a great, but as we unpacked it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this fits perfectly. So let's unpack it for our listeners, for the super logical, practical folks out there like me, Brian. What is it and why should I care about it?
Okay. So with Lyndon Robinson, I wrote a book on this several years ago, and it is true, social capital. I'm an economist, and so we use terms like social capital, but most others don't, right? Terms. So we're going to put it in terms. Yeah, I don't think it's that, but it is definitely something that's a little esoteric out there, to say the least. But there are all kinds of different capitals, and capital are just resources that we can use. So let's talk about what social capital might be. The definition of social capital is literally feelings of sympathy, empathy, or endearment. Now, you might be like, wow, that is soft and sappy, right? Like, what are we talking about here? Okay. But let me show you how it works. And when I do this, I think you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about. So let me do it this way. Suppose you have a car to sell, some hard asset. In this case, we'll use a car. And the market value for that car is $20,000. You've done your research. You're very confident it's $20,000. So you advertise the car, and you get 3 people that come to you and offer you the following. So the first is a man you don't know. And after looking at the car, he offers you $19,000. The second is a woman who you do know and you dislike adamantly. And after looking at the car, she offers you 20 grand. And the final person is your child or grandchild who you really love. And she offers you $18,000. It's all the money she has. Okay, she tells you that. To whom do you sell the car? Okay, now let's just go through these one at a time. You know the value of the car is 20 grand. You've done your research. So do you sell the car to the man who offers you $19,000?
Yeah.
No, because you know the car is worth 20 grand. You don't know this person. You're not taking why give him a discount of $1,000, right? In the second case, you also don't sell the car usually because man, I hate this person. I'm not giving them my good car. If I sell this car to that person, I'm charging him a premium. Okay. By the way, that's the value of the negative social capital. So now you get your granddaughter or your daughter, and she's like, I only have $18,000. Most people will sell the car to that person, and it's because of the feelings you have for that person. Now, again, that the feelings part of this feels squishy, but the dollar amount is not. You can say that the social capital value of that relationship is at least $2,000. Could be more. You might have given the car to her for free. But the point is that it's different than the market value. It impacted the market value of the car. Okay. So if that's the case, then you're like, all right, how do I create those feelings within my organization? Because if I have those feelings, then that's going to impact the transaction. Now, you and I talked a little bit about this for us in our relationship, right? We've worked together for a long time. We've seen each other in a lot of different circumstances. And over those circumstances, I've come to believe that your intentions are always good. So that if something happens that I don't love, my first thought is not, dang, that Mary Claire, she's just evil. My first thought is, there's been a mistake, or there was something outside of Mary Claire's control, or she didn't recognize that this is what would happen if she did this. And I know that with a short conversation, we can get to the bottom of the issue. Again, not solving you or solving me, but just solving the problem. We could get clarity on it and we could figure it out. Okay. That means that my trust with you is very resilient. It would be really hard. I would have to get to a point where it was obvious that you had done what you had done out of intentions that were bad, right? You had intentionally done this, and the evidence would have to be overwhelming that were true, because I'm going to give you lots of benefits of the doubt because of the way that our relationship has been formed.
Well,
so what do you think?
Okay, so for our listeners in my little brain, here's where my head was going. Okay, so when I think about the now what or the so what, the three feelings related to social capital were what?
Sympathy, empathy, endearment.
As the youngest of 6 kids, I feel like I got a lot of social capital because I think I got away with a lot for those 3 reasons. That's part of the reason where my head went. So when I bring it down into the practical, like our relationship, and assuming best intent, I can always assume best intent because we have that high social capital. I can fortunately say that about my husband and other folks in my life. And when I look back in leadership situations where I didn't have those feelings, so this is where my head's going. Do I naturally have those feelings until somebody proves me otherwise? When I think about creating this culture, where do I start? Do I?
Yeah.
So
it's a great question. And by the way, that differs by people. Okay. So I'm a very trusting person. So I start believing that you're doing things for the right reason. You have to prove me wrong. Others will start from the opposite side of that, right? Which is, I'm assuming you're doing things for the wrong reason until you prove me right. I'm going to argue for our purposes here that that's not that important. What is important is the evidence over time. So let's start with steps. Let's go to steps of how do I get this? How do I get social capital? Okay. So step 1, and we've talked a lot about this, and we've also talked about how these principles reinforce and how they come back around. But the first principle is transparency. So I have to be transparent, and you have to believe that I'm transparent. So this is where in the first parts of our relationship early on, I have to be white hot focused on that transparency. I have to make sure that I'm not keeping things from you. Because if you find out something, the back door that wasn't positive, then your trust level goes down and the social capital also goes down. You assume bad intentions. But if I was transparent with you and things went south, you would say to yourself, well, he told me that was a possibility. I'm not surprised. I didn't get, backdoor in this in some weird way. So I'm willing to go forward with this because I knew that was going to happen. So transparency is the very first step. You have to be able to respond with confidence to whatever
as an individual,
happens.
As a leader, just at the individual level, I need to be white hot transparent, period. That is how I need to live as a leader.
Correct.
I would level it up and say,
that's right.
As a leader, it is my responsibility to create transparency in the organization overall, and my head goes to process.
Love it.
Okay.
Love it. Absolutely. Yep, that's absolutely right. So any way that you can create clarity and transparency, that's step one. Step two, do the transparency. In other words, as you say exactly what it is that will happen, do those things. So when I say that we're going to do X, we do X. When I say that this will be the result if you don't do X, that's the result if you don't do X. Let's give you a great example. You see this in parents all the time. Have you seen a parent who will say to a child, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to do X. Or if you don't stop doing this to your little brother, I'm going to do Y.
Yeah.
Okay, that's transparent. Great. Now, what happens when they don't stop?
What you said?
Do you follow through? Because if you don't follow through, what does the child say?
I can keep doing this. I can get away with things. I can,
Yeah. That's right. They're not serious. That's not real. They're not being honest with me, right? So it didn't follow through. Does my trust of that person go up or down? It definitely goes down. Interestingly, so does my social capital in both directions, by the way. How does the parent feel about the child, and how does the child feel about the parent? The parent says, I actually like this child less. That's hard to say, but they're not doing what I say and I like them less, right? Now, love and like are different things, but nonetheless, it impacts the relationship. But interestingly, it also impacts the child's relationship to the parent. The child feels less for the parent. I can't trust this person. They don't do what they say they're going to do. I have no kind of stability around this.
Completely.
I can't. Do you see what I'm saying? And so the relationship becomes less
kids
secure
love boundaries
over time.
It is.
They love boundaries. It's counterintuitive, but the same thing is true in your organization. People love boundaries. They love to know where things are and they love to know how things work so that they can participate effectively in that. Back to process. We talked about if you really run that process. So now let's be honest. We're going to follow through with what we say. Is everything always going to go perfectly? No. So when things don't go perfectly, which they always will, a few things are super important. One is that you restart the transparency again. You come back and you say, hey, things changed. They're now different. This happened or that happened. And now it looks like this. The second thing you do if you're restarting is actually really important. You own any of the parts of that change that are your fault in a very humble way. And by the way, great leaders assume it's their fault. Not that it was like, oh, the weather or, oh, somebody else or, oh, our competitor or, oh, heaven forbid, one of our team members. No, just own it. Like, I didn't see this coming. I didn't understand that we were going to have a tornado. But nonetheless, I didn't see that. I didn't plan for it. It's my fault. But here's what we're going to do in response to that. And we start that process over again. If you approach this with humility and vulnerability and you take it on, people will really appreciate that. They're like, wow, this person not only can reset and we can restart, but they're the ones who are taking the blame. That means I can lean in. And if it's a mistake, they're not going to quickly blame me. They're going to quickly blame other things that aren't me. Therefore, I can give more to this.
Yeah, and I think it actually, I'm building on what you just said and personal experiences, it creates an environment in which we can all actually evaluate the problem, not the person. So, Brian, previous experiences of being in a room and in the mea culpa of like, man, I didn't see this coming. I should have done this. I should have done that. it creates an environment. Everybody gets to continue to evaluate what actually happened and what did we learn from it? And then how would we do that differently, or how do we anticipate? It just creates this learning environment
I love that.
of that humility, honest humility. People can sniff out whether it's not honest or not. It goes such a long way from a culture perspective.
Let's use an example. We can do an example, and this one will resonate with you and me. What if you're the CEO and the other person is the chairman of the board?
We've
and
never
you're
been
a
in
board
that
meeting?
spot. No.
We've never had that, have we? Never been in that spot. And let's say that you come as the CEO and you've
We've
missed
never
your
had
sales
that conversation, Brian.
and you come. They never had that conversation either. And you come in and you say, wow, you know what? It was the weather's fault this quarter, or it was our salespeople's fault, or it was blah, 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 blah. You make all the lists, right? Does when you do that, my immediate trust for you
Yes.
actually probably goes down, because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, she doesn't really know why sales have gone down. Oh my goodness, she is not really in charge of sales. She doesn't really have her hands around it, right? As opposed to you come in and you say, hey, sales were down this quarter and it's my fault. This is why. I didn't get enough resources to the sales team.
Yep.
I didn't do enough training on the sales team. I didn't follow up well enough with the sales team. The sales team missed the objective because I didn't set it
Yeah.
correctly, or whatever the case might be. Ironically and counterintuitively, my trust and social capital, my sympathy for you actually goes up, because I say, wow, she really knows what's going on. She's got her arms around this. She's solving the problem. She knows what the problem is and can work on it. The same would be true if I came and I said, you said, hey, we didn't see this this competitor buying this other competitor out of left field, and I said, wow, that's my fault. I saw that happening and I didn't tell you. And that's my fault. I should have been better at letting you know what was happening, so you could have responded better as the CEO. I didn't do my job as a board member as well as I should have.
Yeah.
Again, your trust actually goes up. You're like, wow, if that person's willing to admit that and own that, then they will take care of me.
Yeah.
They will look out for
Yeah.
me and the
Okay.
things we're trying to accomplish.
So transparency that was helpful, and we have had those conversations, which is hilarious. So transparency is one of these keys. Are there other elements to this, Brian, that on the how-to of building social capital?
Yeah, I mean, there's these are the most important, right? If you do transparency and you follow through, and then you shift, you shift with humility,
Okay.
and then you repeat that process. Those are the main big ones. But I will say this: there are other obvious ancillary things that you can think about that will also matter. For example, if somebody has made a mistake, how do you as a leader respond in an effort to help them improve? Because if all I do is I berate or I belittle or I demean in some sort of way, that reduces social capital and reduces trust. If, however, somebody was willing to say, hey, I messed up, and my response is, how can we get, better training or more practice or better connections or more resources or something that will help you have a better outcome next time? Now I'm creating different levels of social capital as we go forward. Because again, it's all of that relationship-based interactions that
which
are
does
really going to
kind of
matter.
lead back to it takes, in the last episode, it takes time to build trust. That time, though, can shrink if processes are in order and the leader is leading with transparency, with the follow through, and with humility. That I feel like the timeline shrinks.
Correct.
And then the gap, or if there is a false start, so to speak, it's easier to get back up on the horse. A lot of idioms there. That was not a
100%. Yep, that's exactly right.
Mixed a bunch there. That's okay. Okay, Brian, this was super. Again, I am the person like not brass tacks, but like very practical. I felt you effectively kind of connected a high level theory with why the heck should I care as a leader, and then what do I do about it? So that was really helpful for me. Anything else that we should take away as leaders as we either work with clients or work with our organizations to create a peak performance culture?
Yeah, I'll just say this, like many of our principles, it's not whether you have it or don't have it. It always exists. The question is just in what quantity. And in this case, social capital can be negative as well, right? If we have over and over negative interactions, then we approach those with assumptions of intent that are just negative. And those environments, by the way, are so hard to build trust in because you've got to flip that script, and that's tough
on everybody. Okay.
Yeah,
that's helpful.
Very hard.
All right, Brian, I loved this conversation because I actually think it's amazingly useful. And when we think about, again, how do we help leaders create peak performance organizations? Some of what we talk about requires self-reflection on a leader. Some of it requires action. I think this was a beautiful blend of the two. So thank you. I appreciate it. And for all of you listeners, thank you for joining us on this podcast. Please like and follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, we hope your drive towards peak performance is successful.
You've been listening to Peak, a Growth Sport production.